another episode of Four Down Territory. I'm your host, Luke Easterling, alongside Doug Farrar, as always. Doug, let's get right into this week's topics. We're going to start in Jacksonville with Urban Meyer. I mean, the list of reasons for the Jags to move on from him at this point, it seems to grow every week, right? Last week we saw the report from Tom Pelissero, the NFL Network, in which it was revealed that he was calling his coaches losers, that he, lied about the reasons that he benched James Robinson, their best running back, maybe the best player on the team, right? And
Robinson's our best player.
Yeah, right. So, players appear like maybe they're close to revolt, right? Open revolt. I mean, why is it, this is just the latest example, right? Why is it that college coaches struggle so much and so consistently with moving to the NFL level?
Yeah, and Matt Rule should send Urban a basket of flowers because it's really overshadowing all of Rule's issues with the Panthers. I'll go back to something I asked Pete Carroll halfway through his first year in Seattle. Basically why he thought this time around would be different after the Jets didn't work out, Patriots didn't work out. And he had that year 2000. Patriots fired him after the 99 season, and then he went to USC in 2001. And he said he spent that year, he did some consulting, I think he wrote for NFL.com or something like that. But he really, he read some John Wooden books, and however he motivated himself, he said, I did a lot of self-scouting. I did a lot of sort of internal coaching, and I checked like everything I did wrong. And then the next step was, how do I change it? How do I remake myself into the coach I want to be? And it took that entire year. And people don't remember in 2010 when they hired Pete Carroll to replace Jim Moore. People up here in Seattle where I live were kind of aghast, like, oh no. And there was a lot of skepticism. And it was really, when I heard that answer and how convicted Pete was about it, I thought, okay, maybe we got something here. Clearly, they did. A guy like Urban Meyer, Bobby Petrino, I mean, the list goes on and on. Matt Rule, they're so used to in college. Not only is this success easier, you have players with very little power. They don't have a union. They're really, at your beck and call. You get into the NFL, everyone's a grown man. These guys they've got families. They've got a union. They're making more money than you are. And it's just so mumuch more difficult. Forget the schemes and understanding what actually happens on the field at a different level. And I think with Meyer especially, he's the whole Saint Urban thing, as I call it. He's so used to being, over glorified and never questioned that he hit the NFL, and the NFL hits back. The NFL always hits back. And it's, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Urban keeps getting punched in the mouth, and it's clear that he has no plan. And, when you come from college, no matter how successful you are, you have to have the wherewithal to say to yourself, okay, this is different. I can't just come in here and own it like I owned the NCAA. It's a completely different gig.
Well, and honestly, Doug, I think his response in his press conference, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, spoke volumes, where it seemed like he was more concerned with finding the rat, right? And finding out where the leak is coming from than the fact that all of those leaks are happening because of things that are happening within his organization and things that he's doing wrong. And he's causing these things to happen. So like you said, it's such a different game. And when you're dealing with fully grown adults who are doing this for a living, like you said, they have a union, all these rules and policies that are collectively bargained. There's power there that you just don't have, not yet in the college level. I hope that, with some of this NIL stuff, we're moving closer to that balance of power being shifted a little bit, which I think is long overdue. We're going to stay at the college level, actually. Alabama quarterback Bryce Young wins the Heisman Trophy this past weekend. There's no doubt he had a great season, obviously, leading Alabama to the number one ranking, and now they're in the playoffs. But, I mean, should he have won this award, or was this the year, the perfect opportunity to give it to a more deserving player on the other side of the ball?
The only defensive player to win the Heisman was Charles Woodson. We all know Ndamukong Suh should have won it. And I think this year, Aiden Hutchinson is the easy answer. My touchdown wire colleague Mark Schofield has made the case for Will Anderson Jr., Young's Alabama teammate, who wasn't even on the ballot. Anderson has more sacks, 15.5 to 14, I believe, and tackles for loss than Hutchinson. Both players per PFF have logged 73 total pressures. And Anderson has done this in a defense where he's not, like Hutchinson, always the feature-defined edge guy. He's not winning. He's helping other guys flow through and get to the passer. So it's not to diminish what Hutchinson or Young or Kenny Pickett or anyone else I mean, Kenny Pickett forced a rule change with his fake slide, so, good for him. But I'm on Team Anderson.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, you mentioned the fact that he wasn't at the ceremony. He had the third most first place votes, talking about Anderson here. So I don't understand that. It's clear that some of the voters saw the impact he made, and he, again, got more first place votes than everybody except Bryce Young and Hutchinson, I believe. But again, taking nothing away from what Hutchinson did or really how impressive these quarterbacks were. But this award has been narrative-based for years, right? Instead of merit-based. It's usually the quarterback for the best team, the number one team, or their most dominant player. Go back to Derrick Henry when he won it in 2015. And again, Charles Woodson, I love Charles Woodson. He should have won it as a defender alone. But you and I both know, I mean, he probably got it because he did work on special teams and offense, right? There was that versatility, that slash aspect that gave him that, you had your hands in the ball enough to where we can make the case for you to win this award, because if you don't, that's the only way to win it, and you can't get it otherwise.
When Ndamukong Suh didn't win it in 2009, I lost all hope. Because he was so clearly the best player in college football that year. He was on a different planet than everybody else. So at that point, okay, it's the Heisman Trophy is an offensive award. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. To move back to the NFL side of things, Packers cornerback Rasul Douglas is on his 6th NFL team. He's never been successful really before Green Bay signed him off the Cards practice squad in October of this year. Douglas recently said that he didn't really learn to watch tape the right way until last season, which is honestly a pretty remarkable thing to admit. I remember Jamel Dean telling us a similar thing in the Bucs locker room after his rookie season.
I think it happens
it
a
does.
lot.
And, there's a lot of things, technique and certain things that if you're talented enough at high school and even the high college level, they don't bother to teach you certain things because you can get away with just your athleticism, right? So, now Douglas has pick sixes in 2 straight games. First Packer player since Herb Adderley to do that. I can hear John Facenda in my mind every time I hear that name.
Herb Adderley. Yes.
1965, last time that happened for the Packers. So as you look around the league, is there a player that you think should be, mercifully relegated to a different team just so he has a chance to succeed?
I'll go back to Jacksonville and say Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars are very close to ruining him. The Titans in the second half of the season were the worst team in defensive DVOA from week 10 on. Lawrence threw 4 interceptions against the Titans in a 20-0 loss. He took a 20-yard sack. And you can put some of that, one of Lawrence's interceptions, it was a 3rd and 8, and he had the first down if he just run it. But I think at this point, he's just in desperation mode. Between Darrell Bevel and Brian Schottenheimer, there and you've seen it, Luke, there are no concepts that help a quarterback at all. You got receivers bumping into each other, and now your head coach is playing the blame game and just being ridiculous. There were some people that thought Lawrence was the best quarterback prospect since John Elway or Andrew Luck. I wasn't quite that far, because I remember Andrew Luck. We have to remember, Andrew was on a different, pedestal. But certainly Lawrence was amazing. He's thrown no passing touchdowns in 6 games this season, including 5 of his last 6. He had 2 such games in 40 career games at Clemson. They're going to ruin him. I'm getting major David Carr vibes here.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the same theme, but I'll say Justin Fields, the other top quarterback in this draft. I mean, it was 1A and 1B for me in this draft between Lawrence and Fields.
Yes.
Kyle Pitts was the only guy I had ranked overall in between those 2 guys. So,
depending on what offense you run, I would say there are some teams that would have been better off with Fields.
Absolutely. And again, you look at a guy who any other year probably should have been at least the number 1 overall pick. The fact that the NFL let him drop to 11 makes me think that they would have thought otherwise for some reason. But, I mean, in Chicago.
Well, apparently he couldn't read defenses.
Oh, don't even. Let's not. I can't even. Listen, in Chicago, he's dealing with an obviously inept coaching situation. The offensive line is terrible. He has very few weapons consistently. I mean, Lawrence and Fields won't be going anywhere anytime soon, right? They're on rookie contracts. They're going to be able to hopefully build something around them. But, man, here's hoping that a coaching change, at least in the offseason, can be the next best thing to relegation for their development.
That would be nice for both guys.
Now, to finish things off, Doug, we're going to go to a team that we kind of had a feeling was going to get hot here. The Chiefs started 3-4, maybe the NFL's worst defense at that point in the season. Since then, they've won 6 in a row. They haven't allowed more than 17 points in a game. They've allowed less than 10 in 4 of their last 5. And I mean, they just demolished the Raiders on Sunday, right? 48-9. How does a team go from having the NFL's worst defense to perhaps the best in the league in a matter of 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's a really remarkable in-season turnaround. And even, the last 2 Super Bowl seasons for the Chiefs, you know what the narrative was. It's like, if the defense is league average, you're okay because the offense is going to do what it does. Well, the offense is kind of getting back on track. This might be the best defense in the NFL right now. And that has not been the case for the Chiefs, through the Mahomes era. The obvious answer is defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo moved Chris Jones back inside. They wanted to make him an edge. And he's a better he's the best 3-tech in the league, not named Aaron Donald. They got Melvin Ingram, who was unhappy in Pittsburgh. You think Pittsburgh might like him back after what Dalvin Cook did to that run defense? Ooh. And Spagnuolo said last week that ever since Melvin came in, they're playing angry. Well, I don't know. I can't codify angry. I don't know what that means. But I will say that Daniel Sorensen, they were playing him too much. He turned from a full-time liability to a rotational asset. Juan Thornhill, who is getting the time he deserves it free, he's locking everything down. Cornerbacks are playing out of their mind. You got that Honey Badger guy who's doing Honey Badger
he's pretty
things. Good. He's pretty good. I would say in season, you see so many coaches who refuse to adapt to their reality. Kudos to Spagnuolo and his staff for understanding what wasn't working and understanding how to fix it. That's the real story there. And this is not one of those things where they're playing bad teams. They, in the second half of the season, were second in defensive DVOA, which adjusts for opponent, behind the Patriots. I was talking to Aaron Schatz of FO yesterday. He said the Chiefs might be first after what they did to the Raiders. So it's a real thing.
And I think a lot of credit does go to Spags and the other things that you mentioned, the veteran guys on defense. I think Tyrann Mathieu's presence makes such a huge difference in how you're able to scheme when you have a guy that can do so many things at a high level that he can. Ingram, that addition was great. Moving Jones inside, putting him in a great position to succeed where he can do best. But I honestly look to the other side of the ball. I think the offense is making life easier on them as well. They've adjusted in the same way to some of their struggles earlier in the season. They're running the ball more effectively, more consistently. Mahomes, I think, is feeling like he has to play less hero ball now. He's making fewer mistakes and turnovers. That defense is fresher.
Although that one cross field, that 53-yarder, that was illegal.
It should be. It should be. But honestly, we talk about complimentary football, and that becomes a cliche, but this is what it looks like when your defense makes those adjustments and they're handling their side of the business. But the offense also is holding onto the ball longer. You're having more extended drives. You're giving your defense fewer possessions to have to defend and fewer snaps. They're fresher. You combine that with the points that you put together, and that's what you've got a recipe for the huge turnaround that we've seen.
In a very undefined AFC outside of the Patriots, this is, take the L if you're playing these guys because they're nasty.
Yeah, I agree. Nobody wants to face them right now. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks for hanging out with Doug and I for another episode of 4 Down Territory. We will see you again next week.